Hi everyone, welcome to the last session in the Generative AI Awareness course. In this session we're going to look at a typical case study that would be used in a manufacturing environment, operations quality management and precision engineering. So for this session what I decided to do was I have a text description of this case study up on the platform where you're getting this course at the moment. And you can have a look at that text description, and what I done was I went to Google's Notebook LM and I used that source or that text document as my only source, and then I just clicked slide deck. So basically just uploaded that document, the text document, said click the button to give me a slide deck, and this is the slide deck that it has given me. So as you can see in the bottom right here, the watermark, just so that I'm clear, and transparent about using these tools. But I thought it might be interesting to do the very last session going through a slide deck that has been used with generative AI. So start with a bit about the context. As I said, the sector is precision engineering and medical technology contract manufacturing SMEs. Regions are typically, the likes of Galway, Limerick and Sligo. These are manufacturing hubs that would have a lot of med tech industries there. So from the leader's point of view, this is the operations director, the quality assurance manager, or the CEO. So probably more likely the QA manager. So the bottom line is that pragmatic decision makers balancing tight margins, strict compliance and critical client relationships. So we're going to see how, what the problem is here and what the solution is using some kind of generative AI tools. So the challenge was really that there was a lack of knowledge transfer within the manufacturing floor specifically. So there was basically these knowledge silos, and critical operational knowledge, for setting up complex CNC machines and things like that, basically lives within the heads of the veteran operators. So that is a big problem, because if something happens to the operators, then all that knowledge is lost. So that was the challenge. There's a documentation burden as well. So for companies like this, they have to follow certain international standards, and some of these standards require compliance, which means that there will be certain things, like standard operating procedures and things like that. So there are some requirements for some of these industries to basically have, sufficient amounts of documentation around their processes. So if you have this machinist, that's a veteran, they have all of the knowledge. What happens if they're approaching retirement and you don't have the formal documentation? Put all of that together, that equals a critical operational risk. So that's what the challenge was for this, anonymous company. So the solution then that was opted for, and using the generative AI tools. So first of all, what they decided to do was basically follow around the veteran machinist and just get them to talk through what they were doing when they were setting up the CNC machine. So they basically just spoke into a microphone, a headset was given to them, and there was essentially this unstructured factory floor audio. So that audio file then was fed into a generative AI processing engine, essentially just one of the tools that we looked at before. And without typing a word, what this company did was they got the Gen AI tool to extract all of the information and properly format it in the format of the standard operating procedure document. So looking at it a lot closer, what did they actually do? So like I say, they needed to capture the audio first. So they wanted this to be as low friction as possible. They didn't want the factory workers to type, essentially, so they just wanted them to speak. So they used things like mobile dictation apps, smartphone voice recorders, things like that, and tools like Whisper, which could, go from speech to text. So using these multimodal models, they could put in the audio, so capture the audio with some kind of headset, to a microphone that was maybe connected to a smartphone, and then that would produce the audio file that then could be fed into a model and converted to text. and then that text could be analysed. So the operator might say something like, first I check the coolant levels, you have to make sure the valve is turned 45 degrees, otherwise it jams, then I load the raw titanium, and so on and so on. So this is what's fed, this audio file will be fed directly into the model. So once the audio file has been loaded into the model, then you need to have a prompt that is going to be quite strict, because you want this thing to be essentially popping out the same answer, every time, or doing the same task every time consistently. So a good way to set up these prompts is to make sure that you have some things included. For example, the role or the context is always good to have. The specific task that you want the model to do. So be very, descriptive in the task that you want, and then give it some constraints as well, and say to it, I want this specific output. So you can, give it the specific format of your output. So once you have a role and the context, and then the specific tasks and any constraints on the tasks, and then the format of the output, that once you put all of them together, that's a pretty good blueprint, for prompting these generative AI tools. So as you can see this example, your quality assurance manager specializing in ISO 9001 compliance and providing a raw transcript of an expert machinist setting up the CNC. Convert this transcript into a formal standard operating procedure. Use this structure, and it just gives the structure of the format of the output. Okay, so taking in the capturing the audio is the first step, and then feeding it in to the chatbot along with this prompt. That's the next step. So once the output from that then will basically be a standard operating procedure that will follow the proper format of the ISO that was given. So when we look at the return on investment on both of these approaches, so the traditional approach would have been clipboard, stopwatch, observation, which would have taken days. When we are just capturing the audio, that could take maybe whatever amount of time it takes to set up the machine, let's say 15 minutes. Drafting time then, of the standard operating procedures could take multiple weeks. With the generative AI tools, we could bring that down to a couple of days, because all we need to do is really review and approve what the generative AI model is giving us. There's a high risk of human error and inconsistency in the old, traditional approach, but with this way, it's going to be automated exactly to the standard that we give it. And then for HR, the traditional way of doing things, HR doesn't really have anything, a single-use static document, that would basically be this document that's written after 3 weeks. But if we use the generative AI approach, we could use the chatbot to generate a multiple choice training quiz based on the standard operating procedure that it just provided. So we could take things further. We could start to create training materials as well based on the output of our standard operating procedure. So looking at your return on investment, the first thing is risk mitigation. Rapidly digitizing the tribal knowledge of an aging workforce. This is what the leader's getting, basically out of this, and securing the company's operational continuity against the bust factor. So if somebody is that person could be hit by a bus now tomorrow, and it won't matter, because that knowledge is now, the risk of losing that knowledge has now been mitigated. The next thing, managerial bandwidth, so reclaiming hundreds of hours of QA manager time. When we're writing up documents over weeks and collecting the data over weeks, that was now down to a matter of days. So you're shifting leaders from creating documents to reviewing systems. And then the audit readiness as well, so confidently demonstrating to external ISO auditors that all the processes are documented, standardized, and immediately up to date. So there's all of these benefits to the leaders. So what steps do we need to do if we wanted to follow this example? So first of all, we would identify critical knowledge vulnerabilities. So ask yourself, if my top supervisor won the lottery, which machines would grind to a halt? And identify 3 to 5 undocumented critical processes. So that would be the first thing that you would do. Next, then you want to implement low friction capture. So in this example, you could equip the operator with a headset and have them narrate a step-by-step physical walkthrough of machine setup and capture the messy reality. So once we have the raw data captured, what we can do is feed that into a secure Gen AI environment. So maybe ChatGPT Enterprise or Microsoft Copilot or Claude, whichever one. Then we would execute that along with the prompt, the managerial prompt, and we would apply, the strict ISO prompt template. So role, context, task, and structure or format of the output. And this would enforce the company compliance standards on the raw data. So essentially the unstructured audio goes in, and then the ISO compliant standard operating procedure comes out the other end. So the next step is probably the most important step. That's the human in the loop safeguard. So obviously before we're going to do anything with the document, we need to review it. So in this case, it may be the machinist, the person that's the expert. So GenAI is just a drafting tool, it's not the final authority. So the operations manager and the original machinist would maybe review the AI draft together and verify that ISO compliance is maintained. So the machinist verify technical accuracy and the manager will verify compliance, and only then would it be approved. So as you can see here, the AI drafted document would be the output from the first 3 steps, and then this would be the 4th step, and like I say, the most important step before we approve it to go onto the company's the official company system. So the next thing we do then is we would just integrate this into our training matrix, so save the approved standard operating procedure into the official document control. So what you could do is, as a bonus move, feed the approved standard operating procedure back into the generative AI and prompt, now turn this SOP into a 10-question multiple choice training quiz for new hires. This would instantly create a measurable HR training asset with 0 extra writing time. So there's loads of things that these tools can help us do and make all of our processes a lot more efficient. Now moving on to the funding, just a brief quick mention about this. There is a lot of information up on the platform where the course is running, so I'd advise you to go and have a look there because this stuff is changing all the time. And as you can see here, I'm pretty sure that this figure is wrong, so it just shows you, we need to review the generative AI tools, what they're saying, but I'm pretty sure this is over 6,000, I think, but you can double check that. So Enterprise Ireland, their digital discovery grant, like I said, I've put the links up online so you can have a look, and this is one of the pathways. There's a couple of different pathways that are up online, that you can maybe see is your organization eligible. But this one is essentially for funding a small strategic consultancy assignment to map your specific data bottlenecks, assess your AI readiness, and prototype the initial knowledge capture workflow. So it's basically low financial risk and high exploratory value. And they fund up to 80% of it, which I think is, well, it's definitely 5,000 or more. I think it's over 6,000 at this stage, but you can double check those figures. So Enterprise Ireland do have these grants that allow you to explore your digital, or your AI maturity and things like that. The next stage then is, again, these figures could be wrong. I think that might be slightly off as well. So the next stage is funding, basically moving beyond a single pilot and developing something that is more comprehensive. Let's say, if it was in the manufacturing industry, it would be wider manufacturing process integration and preparing the workforce for this technology deployment. So again, Enterprise Ireland grant goes up to tens of thousands, the second one does. And then moving on to the third stage, this is full-scale operational rollout, and this is 50% funded. So this is essentially whenever you're embedding the generative AI technology deeply within your company operations to automate massive, compliance burdens and things like that. There are regional and specialist supports available as well. So CEDAR, the European Digital Innovation Hub, one of the supporters of this course. There's also your local enterprise officer, and things like that, and also SkillNet Ireland. But again, I would draw your attention to all of the information that we have up on the platform. So strategic change management, culture first. Can you make our jobs a little bit easier? That's a quote from Edmund Scanlon, CEO of Kerry Group. So leadership framing, the factory floor staff may view AI with suspicion, but leaders must explicitly frame this as a tool to capture your experience and make your jobs easier to train to others, rather than a tool for replacement. So you want to try and shift this narrative from tech implementation to culture and legacy preservation. So you can see, it is all about a mind shift kind of switch, and obviously, that will come with the culture first. So 5 key takeaways at the end of this session. Secure tribal knowledge. So generative AI will de-risk the bus factor by digitising veteran expertise to reclaim management bandwidth, reducing ISO documentation tasks from weeks to days. Leverage the grant pipeline, use de-risk funding to finance this transformation. And human in the loop is mandatory. AI creates the draft, managers and operators hold the final authority. And culture will always drive adoption. So if you can try and frame AI as a tool to ease friction and preserve legacy, not to replace staff. So if you can, convince your staff that you're using these tools to increase their productivity and make their lives easier, not to replace them as workers. So next thing to do is, this is if you want to follow this blueprint, identify an undocumented bus factor on your factory floor, have the operator record a natural 5-minute voice memo walking through that process, and then contact your local Enterprise Ireland or LEO advisor to ask about the Digital Discovery Grant. So that was a little note, I think that was at the end of the text description. So that's not really anything that you need to do. It's up to yourself whether you want to or not, but that was just the Notebook LM presentation. Give them suggestions. Okay, so that's pretty much it. I'd like to try and keep this session as short as possible. And thanks for listening throughout the whole course, and hopefully this has been helpful for you on your journey towards AI adoption. Thanks for listening.